So what we're going to talk about today, and recognizing that this group is technical quite a bit, and also recognizing that many of you are consultants who actually have to go out and figure out how to get consulting gigs to do work. Yeah. As well as me, I do the same thing. I have to go out and find my own work just like you. I want to share with you some ideas about how you create a sales strategy, because not many of us have been trained professionally in how to do that as consultants. You may find this interesting for yourself, or you may find this interesting for your clients, because many of them, in their creation of their websites and their marketing stuff, struggle with the issue of how they take this content and apply it to selling. In fact, one of the biggest problems that you have when you see with a lot of clients is, and I see this a lot, is my clients, salespeople, don't use the marketing material when they go sell. In fact, they basically ignore the website and everything else that the marketing department produces, or in the case of smaller businesses, the marketing person, because they probably only have one. And in some cases, like me, and maybe like many of you, I'm a single shingle person, and I have to go make my own marketing material and do my own selling material, and gosh, that's a lot of work, and if I have to do both marketing and selling stuff, that's even more work. That doubles my work. So whether you're in this for yourself, or whether you're doing it with your clients, or whether you're a nonprofit, for example, even nonprofits have to go sell and fundraise, right? All those kinds of things are important when you think about how you're going to be successful. And we can use content in Joomla as a way of delivering that success, both for ourselves and for our clients. Now, some of you may have seen this. I've shared this amongst the group in Palatine, and some of you actually have a copy of my book. About 6 months ago, I wrote a book called 99 Questions to Achieve Your Sales Goals. And it's effectively a book of questions. It has 99 questions in it about sales. Okay? It's primarily targeted at business leaders and sales managers, people who lead sales organizations, and it's challenging them to think about all the right things that they need to do in order to run their sales team. Now, for those of us who are single shingle, or for those of us who are consultants, we may not have a sales team to run, but everybody needs to think about how to generate revenue. So we wrote this book, and in the context of that, what happened to me was I began to realize that I was doing more than just writing a book on sales. I was actually creating something that was really my marketing plan as well as my sales plan. Why? Because when you create a book, you have to think about a lot of different things. For example, who's going to buy my book, right? Who's the audience that I'm selling this book to? What value are they going to get out of my book when they read it? How are they going to use this book in their own business? What's going to happen when this book gets published and there's 85 other books like it on the marketplace? Who's the competition that I'm actually dealing with when I write this book? There's lots of books on sales, lots of books on sales management. And then probably one of the more interesting aspects of this was actually learning how to publish a book on Amazon. The whole process. Now, I had a guy who helped me learn how to do this process, and it was very enlightening. He actually called it the 99 Questions process, because it's really, from his perspective, about how to write a 99 Questions book. But guess what? The 99 Questions is the information and the conversation that I have with my customers every day. These are the questions that I actually ask my own clients. When I sit down with a sales manager, I ask them the same questions. So when I look at how I'm going to go to market, what would be the logical thing to do? Well, answer the questions, of course. And so that's what I started out to do. In the process, I was at the Joomla group meeting in Palatine back several months ago. Kendall was there, and Dennis, I know you were there too. And several people saw the book and they said, this is pretty cool. How did you do this? And so I got into some conversations with people, and what it came down to was a lot of people don't really know how to sell. A lot of people don't necessarily understand how they're supposed to go out and get clients. They just have had their own personal experience in doing it, or they've just gone out and done it because they have to. So I decided that I would do something to try and help people understand how they could put together a sales plan. And because most of the colleagues that we have in the Joomla community are consultants running small firms, I think it's helpful when you can build a plan that really is low cost, no cost. How do you get free resources? Where do you find stuff on the internet? Instead of having to go pay a sales consultant maybe $10 or $15 or $20,000. Some of my engagements are six figures, right, when I work with some B2B companies. So I wanted to provide something that would help people be able to build their own plans and do it for themselves at a low or no cost, and I think that's what this came out to be. So here's what we're going to look at today. First, why do we need a sales strategy? Why do we care? It's not just about getting revenue. There are other reasons why, and a lot of them have to do with the amount of work it takes to actually do this stuff. If you have to go out every day and generate business as well as deliver consulting or sell products or other things, it's a lot of work, okay? In companies that are bigger, they have whole departments of people that do this stuff. They have whole sales teams of salespeople that go out and sell, right? So there's a lot to this, and there's a lot of opportunity here, but we have to understand what the basics are so we can figure out how to do it ourselves. Then I'm going to jump into what the sales in a box is. And I'm going to get in the box, and I'm going to show you the tools and the things that you can use. Some of them are books that you can buy on Amazon. Some of them are tools that you can download off the internet. And some of them are just techniques that I teach salespeople how to do when they go out and sell. And I think you'll find that very interesting is how do you translate the stuff that's on a website into a sales call, because not many people think about that. And then I'm going to show you how you can get started with this stuff. I'm going to give you a page on my website where you can get all of this stuff, or you can get references to all of it. Like I said, a lot of these, like the books that I'm going to recommend to you, are things you can buy on Amazon, probably for less than $50 total. So let's get started. First thing is, most people that I know, and I'll just ask for a raise of hands, how many of you actually have a sales plan, like a business plan? Something that tells you what your goals are for revenue. You do? That's great.
About 7 years ago I did, but then I figured I don't want to mortgage my house when it started, so it's laying around my office.
So that's one of the things about a sales plan is, a lot of people think building a sales plan is an expensive and difficult thing to do. And also what it means is, I'm going to actually start building a business. And for some people, that's where they have to stop because they're worried about the financial commitment and the other things that they have to do. But that experience is really not unique. Most small businesses and consultants that I work with, most of them don't have a formal sales plan. So if you're in consulting or if you're in services delivery and you're working on stuff, probably your exposure to sales has been things like going to a car dealer or working with the sales guy at Best Buy or CompUSA, or maybe if your company uses some software vendors or other kinds of things, maybe you've been exposed to software firms like, I don't know, SAP or Oracle or something like that. Those kind of people are professional salespeople. They've been trained in sales. But a lot of times we feel like when we deal with these people that we're being manipulated and we're being, pushed around to do things, right? Because these people tend to be pretty aggressive, right? So if you're not a professional salesperson, and probably most of you here aren't, you probably really don't know much more about sales than what you've actually experienced. And that's the behaviors that you think about when you actually go out to sell yourself, because that's the only thing you have, is what your own personal experience was when you sell. And actually, for a lot of salespeople, that's a problem for them because they never got trained in how to sell, and so they just do a lot of crazy things that they don't realize are not productive, right? And that's where we get all the crazy stories about selling and why a lot of people in the sales profession have interesting reputations when it comes to what they do. The key thing is, what are you doing to create demand for your stuff, right? So how do you know that you're actually getting people to do things? Are you getting leads? Are you getting people to call you on the phone? Do you have your name in the Joomla resource directory, for example, and people call you to do conversions, right? Things like that. When you go out and meet with customers, how many of your conversations actually result in a sale? Is it 50% of them? Is it 25% of them? If you didn't get somebody to contact you in the first place and you just went out and talked to them, how successful would you be in actually getting them to buy something? Okay? And then lastly, how do you know when you're adding value to a customer? How do you know that the stuff you're doing is something that they really can value and need? Because before you actually deliver anything, you have to convince them that you're the right person to do the job, or you're selling the right product. The second thing is, we often learn about sales and marketing through content. And if you're like me, I Google a lot of stuff. I go to a lot of these websites where they have stuff on marketing. There's a lot of free information. And in fact, if you subscribe to either HubSpot or Marketing Crops, you no doubt get at least 7 emails a day, if not more. If you're really into this stuff, you will get literally 25 or 30 emails a day, offering you all sorts of ebooks and case studies and presentations and other kinds of stuff. Because this is a big industry. This is a multi-billion dollar industry of getting people to buy stuff using the internet to market it. Okay? And the people who run this are giant ad agencies, marketing firms, media companies. We have several of them here in Chicago. You probably know several of them. Donnelly, for example, is a big media company, right? The Tribune company. These people overwhelm you with data. And so if you are a small business or a person who's trying to figure out how to do a marketing strategy on budget, it gets to be overwhelming if you have to go through all this material. One of the things that happens with this is that marketing starts to get separated from sales. Because when we look at this stuff, all we hear is marketing, branding, imaging, sort of the advertising kinds of stuff that go with marketing. When we think about sales then, we don't really think it's marketing anymore. We think it's activities, right? Because salespeople go out and sell. What do? They make sales calls. They go talk to customers. They go close deals. They do paperwork. They write contracts, right? They do proposals. Those are all activities. They're not communication, right? They're forms of communication, but they're not the actual communication. In fact, what's interesting is that part of the reason why sales and marketing don't get along quite frequently is because people make a choice. They make a choice to do marketing over sales, or they make a choice to do sales over marketing. So why not do both, right? Why not ignore all the tsunami of stuff and try to figure out what you really need to get something done? Because if all this stuff keeps hitting you, you're never going to get anything done. And that's one of the problems with this whole industry is they just overwhelm you with stuff. Now, the other thing is, does everybody know who this guy is? This is the E-Trade baby. This is not your customer. Your customer is not 28 years old. Most CEOs of companies are not Gen Y or Gen Z or millennials, okay? In the web development space, it's, being that it's cool, there's a lot of young people that work in the internet space, right? But the fact is that very few of them get venture capital, get private equity, all that stuff that you see sitting out here. There's maybe 10 firms out here, right? There are thousands and tens of thousands of people building web stuff in Chicago, right? We all know that. But most of those people are not the people buying your services. Most of the people who buy your services, the people who actually make the decision, are guys like me in their 40s and 50s. And I'm a baby boomer. I'm not a Gen X, okay? And as a baby boomer, I have all sorts of experience dealing with salespeople. And I know all their tricks, right? I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to talk to you. Because I don't want to deal with sales stuff, right? So what do? The first thing I do in today's market and this wasn't even true as of maybe 3 to 4 years ago, but it is true now. I Google everything. How many people, when they look for a product, Google first? Okay, I rest my case. 60% of the time that used to be spent by salespeople calling on customers, whether it was cold calling or doing marketing activities or making sales calls, 60% of that time now is gone because people Google your company and your service, and they figure out what you do, who you are, and where you've done things, and who you've worked with, and they sometimes know more about what you do than you do. And when you're a salesperson or you walk in the door and try to have a conversation with them, guess what? You think they're here, they're over here. They're almost making a decision, and you may not even be in the running and not even know it. And that's one of the things that we have to deal with in today's environment, is the people we're dealing with spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to avoid getting sold to, and they go off and find information on the internet and get to be pretty good at figuring it out before they ever talk to you. Now that doesn't mean that they know everything there is to know. In fact, one of the misperceptions is that if I go out and Google stuff, I actually know what I'm talking about. Believe me, I know that because I Googled a lot of Joomla stuff, and when I sat down with Kendall to actually do my Joomla stuff, it didn't look like what I thought it looked like. I was amazed. In fact, the first question I had to ask him was, what's Joomla? I didn't really understand it at all. So that's a perception issue, but that's what's prevalent in the marketplace right now, is people think that they understand it because they Googled it. After all, like the commercial says, because it's on the internet, isn't it true? Now, the last thing we have to deal with is what can you afford? Because a lot of us don't have a ton of money to spend on selling and marketing. In fact, we don't have a lot of money to do anything. We're really billing our customers and living our daily life and trying to keep going. And the minute we can get a new customer, that's one more bill we can pay or one more thing we can do. And just like you, I do the same thing. Okay? The challenge is that we think building a sales strategy is costly and expensive when it really isn't. In the 2 years that I've been working on being a sales consultant since I left my job, my day job, I've spent less than $1,000 on marketing stuff. And I've done direct mail, I set up a website, I use a bunch of different Joomla extensions. I think I paid maybe $75 for all the Joomla extensions I use. And when I did my learning and my consulting with people here in this room and others who have helped me with my stuff, I traded my consulting for their consulting so that I could get help. And that's one of the ways that you can save money. The truth is that if you do a good job of building your content and delivering it, using a tool like Joomla saves you a ton of money, right? But you still have to build the content, and you still have to deliver it. And then you need to give it to your salespeople so that they can use it too. And we're going to talk about how to do that today, which is something that not many consulting folks know about. So what we're going to try to do today is we're going to try to show you how we can combine sales and marketing together. Because we want marketing and sales to work together. We don't want them to be marketing versus sales, and salespeople use one thing and the marketing people put other stuff on the website. If your potential customer Googles you and sees stuff on the website and then has a salesperson come in and they don't sound the same as the website, what does that tell them about your business? Right? What does that inconsistency do when they try to decide whether they're going to use you or not? We want to use the marketing stuff to sell. Okay? We want to use the selling stuff to market. We want sales and marketing people to work together if they're separate people, or if it's you want to integrate together sales and marketing stuff. Okay? Now, I have lots of marketing friends who tell me that that's a really bad idea, right? But the truth is, if you're a small business person, or if you're a consultant like me, you can't afford not to do that, because that's the only option you have. I can't go out and hire a $15,000 marketing consultant to go draw all my graphics and fill in all my web content and things like that. That's reserved for companies that I work, clients that I work with who have the money to do that. Okay? Also, we want the message that we're delivering to be of tremendous value to the customer. because we have to somehow distinguish ourselves from all the other Joomla consultants or Drupal consultants or other kinds of consultants if we're talking about technology, or product companies if we're talking about widgets. We have to be able to distinguish ourselves from those people so that somebody will think we're unique and we're better than the other guys. And when we do that, that's when we get a sale. And the result of improving all this is that you're going to get a lot more business. And that's really what we want to do with sales analytics. So, as we go into developing our sales strategy, we're going to focus on 4 key objectives. And I'm going to show you now, after we go through the objectives, I'm going to show you the actual tools that help you accomplish this. First, we're going to focus on the things that customers really want and need. And some of you who work with me in here know that when you get asked that question, the first thing you do is you kind of like go, oh shoot, what is it that I really think that they want? It takes a second to think about it, doesn't it? Because it's really important that if you're not really focused on what the customers need and you're more focused, say, on what you deliver, that's a problem. Because the customer may or may not care about what you deliver. So what you deliver has to line up with what they need. Hopefully, in developing your strategy, you figure out how you make those 2 things align together. Okay? You want to create content on the marketing side, it's good stuff, but you also want to take your experience in the field, the meetings that you have, or the meetings that if you have salespeople, the meetings that your salespeople have, or if your clients have salespeople, the meetings that they have, that information needs to be shared back. Because what happens a lot of times is, when you work in the world of marketing, when you work in the world of websites, it's an artificial world. It's not the reality of what happens day to day when customers use your products and services. I'm sure many of you work with system administrators or technology managers or CIOs, and those people, their job is to help run their business, right? And sometimes when the things that you do as a web developer or a web designer or a web person, when you do those things, they don't necessarily line up with what those business people are trying to accomplish. And so that's something that you need to get that feedback loop built into your process. You need to use the same content for both marketing and selling. Whatever's on your website, your salespeople need to articulate that. Or if you are doing it yourself, you need to be able to deliver the same messages that are on your website in your selling. Okay? And then the last thing is, we want to manage that content, and we want to understand how it's being used in our conversations. The better job we can control what salespeople say to a customer and how they say it, or what we say to a customer, the more we sit down and try to figure out how that works and whether we're saying the right things, the better we're going to do. So let's go now through this and let's do it. We're going to talk first about how we would get customers to buy our product and how they get our information. I'm going to show you some techniques for how you do that and how you plan for that. We're going to then focus on how customers perceive you and get value out of what you do. And we're going to talk about techniques where you can communicate your value to the customer in ways that are most relevant to them. We're going to talk about the tools that are available, and like I said, there's no tool in here that I'm going to show you that would cost you more than maybe $30 to get. And as you know, Joomla is open source and it's effectively free, as long as you got a computer to put it on, right? And everything I'm going to show you is going to be low cost. So unless you're going to go out and hire people to do stuff, you can probably do all this on your own. And I will say to you now, if you're willing to spend 30 days, 2 hours a week doing this, you will have a plan in a month. Okay? And I'm going to show you exactly how you do that. So let's start out with what's in the box. And the first thing I want to share with you is that, and I know I did this, when I go to the bookstore, I'm a big bookstore person. I go to the bookstore all the time. I'm always on Kindle too. I got stuff that I get from Amazon every day, and I buy a lot of sales books. And believe me, a lot of sales books that you read are a waste of time. They are just not helpful, okay? So one of the things I wanted to share with you is, how do you start getting prepared to do this stuff? Well, there are 3 things you can do. First, there is the internet, and you can do research on it. And there are some interesting sources of information. I'm going to share a couple of them with you during my presentation today. But also, I want to recommend to you 2 books that I think are really good. And by the way, you don't have to write this down. It's available. This presentation is going to be downloadable from the Joomla site, so don't worry about that. These books are effectively 2 of the better books on sales and marketing. One book is about selling, and the other book is about marketing. Customer-centric selling is written by a guy by the name of Mike Bosworth. Mike Bosworth is probably one of the leading sales trainers in the world. Just retired recently. He was the guy that originally invented a lot of the consultative selling and solution selling type things that many sales trainers do today. He's one of the fathers of sales training. And customer-centric selling is a set of techniques, and some of which I'm going to show you today, that will help you learn how to do better jobs selling to your customers. Okay? The New Rules of Marketing and PR is by a guy by the name of David Meerman Scott. David Meerman Scott is one of the premier gurus in the public relations and marketing field. He's probably one of the more controversial guys in the marketing space because a lot of what he recommends, the traditional digital marketing community, the web people, the advertising agency people, they don't like it. They don't like what he says. Because a lot of what he says is practical, pragmatic, don't hire a consultant to do something type advice. Okay? If you follow his book, you will learn a lot about marketing, and you will learn how to do a lot of marketing stuff that agencies charge you thousands and thousands of dollars to do. It's a really good book. I highly recommend it. So we're going to use these tools, and then I'm also going to suggest to you that if you have, like me, a library account. So I have a library card, and I live in Naperville. Naperville has one of the best public libraries in the country, and a lot of the Chicago suburbs have great libraries. Most of the libraries that we have in the Chicago area, including the city of Chicago, have online access to things like Reference USA and Info USA and things like that. These are services where you can download information about about potential customers. You can even download leads, and by leads, what I mean is company contact information. So if you want to go target a particular group of people, let's say you work a lot with, say, banks. You can go out and get a whole list of banks that are small to medium-sized banks in the Chicago area. There happen to be about 120 of them in Chicago, if you didn't know that. So those kinds of resources are very valuable, and you can get all that information for free, and you can do the downloads up to a certain point, like maybe 50 records at a time.
Well, what is it called?
Well, the service that I use is called Reference USA, and Reference USA is published by a company called Info Group. And Info Group actually is Dun & Bradstreet. Okay, so if you're familiar with D&B records and stuff like that, they're an offshoot of Dun & Bradstreet. But Info Group, Info USA, Reference USA can only be accessed through libraries. That's why it's a special tool, and you have a limited amount of downloads. But guess what? If you haven't really done this before, and you go get 50 companies to call, that's 50 more than you had before, right? So and you can do that every day, every time you access it. Okay, any questions?
50 calls in a day, you're really skating.
Yeah, if you do 50 calls in a day, you're doing better than me. I'll tell you that. So, let's get started into the process. Let's take these resources now and let's start doing stuff with them. Right now, a couple of you in the room are going through this process with me, and it's an interesting process because it really forces you to think about what you do for a customer, how you talk to a customer, and what a customer values about what you do for them. Okay? What I'm going to ask you to do as the first step is create your own 99 questions. Okay? Takes a little bit of work to sit down and do that, but it's worth doing because it really does help you understand a lot about how you interact with the customer and what's important when you sell stuff to them. Okay? There are 4 value elements that go into creating 99 questions. First one is called customer value. It's the questions that customers Google on the internet when they're trying to figure out who you are. So, an example of a customer value question would be, what is Joomla and why should I use it? Okay? That's one of the first things I Googled when I learned about Joomla. I actually learned about Joomla from a guy who does newspapers with it. It's a very cool set of newspaper stuff, and he was showing me how he moved stuff around on the screen, and he's managing text blocks. He got all this cool stuff. He got this thing from was it Rocket Themes.
Yeah.
He got a Rocket Theme template for newspapers, and he was building newspapers and showing me how he could move all these text blocks around on the screen and things. It was very cool. That's the first time I ever saw Joomla. I never had heard of it before that. It was like only about 3 years ago. Solution development questions are questions that you ask typically when you go in and you're interrogating the customer about their needs, right? So, for example, how do you want to administer your website? And do you have a person that is able to do that on your team? I think I ask that question every time I talk to somebody about a website of any kind. The third kind of question is competitive questions. Competitive questions are the things that you should think about when you talk about your company versus anybody else. Okay? So for example, I'll just give you an example of one of the folks that I work with. Once you're done with your site, how are you going to get training to support your administrative activities? Now, why is that a competitive question? The reason it's a competitive question is because a lot of consultants who do Joomla work don't train people how to do stuff. They're PHP developers and they do project, right? Or they're people who build websites and convert them and do other things like that. But they don't necessarily train the user or the administrator or the content developer to work with those products, right? Now I know that's sort of a simple example, but the point is that some people do training, some people don't. If you do training, it's a competitive advantage for you when you work with customers who are going to start administering their own site, right? The fourth kind of question is a teaching question. And when I think of teaching questions, I think of my friend Avery Cohen at Metris. I'm sure many of you know Avery. Avery's on a mission to teach people about SEO, right, and what it means. To me, what it means is, how do I get more customers to go to my website and call me once they get there? That's a fundamental reason why you do SEO, right, is to drive web traffic to your site so that you can get more contacts and leads for potential customers, okay? But there's lots of other things. And when you go into a meeting with a customer, if you can tell them something unique about what you do that they don't know about themselves, which a lot of people don't really understand SEO very well, that is a unique competitive advantage, and those are the kinds of questions that get people to decide that they want to use you. Because if you have a unique skill set, you can use that to your advantage to get people to think about things that they wouldn't necessarily have thought about originally themselves. Okay? Now, to give you an example, when I wrote the 99 Questions book, I did the entire 99 questions in 2 hours. Why? Because I love sales. I know how to manage a sales team. I've been doing it for years. You, likewise, have been doing whatever you're doing for several years, I'm sure. You have technical experience, or you have implementation experience, or you have customer experience. You've been having these conversations with people for a long time, and you probably know a lot about it, but you never thought about sitting down and writing yourself out 99 questions. I can tell you right now, Kendall and I are working on our 99 questions right now for him. We did 65 questions in what, 45 minutes?
Yep.
Yeah. We did 65 questions in 45 minutes. Okay? It's not that hard. Okay? Now I can tell you, in the sales training world, when I talk about stuff like this, people are absolutely frantically amazed, because the hardest thing that sales training people think there is to do when they train people in sales is to get them to ask the right questions, right? That's because they don't have 99 questions. They don't know how to do it, right? If you do it like this, it's easy. If you try to do it like a sales training guy does it, where he tries to interrogate the sales guy to figure out what he knows and how he does it, that's a bad idea. You know much more about what you do than anybody. So you can come up with these questions really easily. Just sit down with a Word document and write them out. Put customer value, solution development, competitive, and teaching as your columns, and just write out the questions for each one. By the way, all this stuff is going to be downloadable, so you can use this as a frame of reference if you want. Now the next thing is who are we going to sell to? So now we have our questions and we know sort of what questions we're going to ask. But in conjunction with that, how do we understand when we go through and we're doing selling, who's going to buy this stuff, right? Is it the CEO of the company, or is it the marketing director, or is it the web developer, or is it the CIO of the company? Who is going to actually be the person buying your stuff? So we want to spend some time trying to understand who that person is and why they would buy from us. So that when we ask these questions and we go and have these conversations, and when we write our marketing material for the website, we want to write it to those people, right? We want those people to resonate and understand what we're trying to tell them about our business, right? So this is a tool that you can download from David Meerman Scott's site. Again, David Meerman's the guy who wrote Marketing and PR. And this is a PDF file that you can download. He has many, many other forms and stuff that you might be interested in looking at. This one is called a buyer persona. A buyer persona, is anybody here familiar with buyer personas, what they are in marketing? Anybody ever work with that? Okay. So a buyer persona is the thing that marketing people use to describe the person who's going to be buying the product. And sometimes these things get to be very complicated, and lots of marketing research is done, and lots of things focus groups are held, and they have all sorts of techniques of visualizing people and putting their picture up on a wall. This is Mary, and Mary is a middle-aged housewife whose husband makes $75,000 a year, blah, 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 blah. They go through some crazy stuff to do this. You don't have to do any of that, okay? All you have to do is get this form and fill it out, okay? The questions are pretty simple. Who are they? What are the problems you can solve for them? Why do they care about you? And where are they? Okay? It's really simple stuff. If you deal with 2 or 3 different kinds of people when you sell your product or service, do 3 of them. If you sell to the CIO and the marketing director, do 1 for each. Pretty simple. Again, this form there's a link to this form on my site, my resources page, and you can download it from his site if you're interested in seeing more about David Meerman Scott's stuff. So now we've created questions. We've decided who we're going to sell to. What are we going to do next? Well, we're going to answer the questions. The thing about the 99 Questions book is there's a couple guidelines, and let me share 1 or 2 of them with you. One of the guidelines is no question could be more than 140 characters. Why is that? It's the length of a tweet, right? Also, with 99 questions, how many weeks of blog can I do? 99 weeks, right? 99 weeks is literally more than 2 years of material. So when somebody comes to you and says, gosh, I really don't know what to write my blog about, hand them a question and say, here's one of the 99 questions, answer that. Because that's what the customer wants to know anyway, right? So you can take all these 99 questions and you can use different techniques to build content. Now, what is the problem with building content? Does anybody work with people who do content? Okay, what's the biggest problem they'll tell you?
They don't have time.
They don't have time. And by the way, if you have to get that information from a senior executive instead of just doing it yourself, it's even harder.
Yeah, they don't have time and they don't have permission.
Right. So how do you get time? And I won't address how you get permission because that's a different problem. But I will tell you how you get time. Okay? The first thing you do is you use tools to get time. So one of the tools I use is a product called Dragon Naturally Speaking. Is anybody familiar with it? Sure. It's a dictation tool. It's voice to text. If you haven't seen the little kid commercial on TV where the guy is visualizing the pirate, the little kid is visualizing the pirate, he's writing about the pirate, and he says backspace, backspace, because the pirate has some kind of device that he's going to hit it with or whatever. It's cute. But you can buy Dragon Naturally Speaking at CompUSA for $35. Okay? It's cheap. It literally, if you get a little practice with it, you can literally go 10 times faster than you normally could if you were typing. You can literally do it at the pace of conversation. It does take a little practice. Another technique I use a lot is what I call a journalistic technique, which is I go interview the person. So if I'm a marketing guy and I need to go get the CEO to do something, what I do is I say, look, if you give me 2 hours of your time and let me record what you say, I'll use that information. You can see what it looks like when I'm done. And then what do? I take that recording and I turn around and I send it to India and have them transcribe it for $200. Okay? Because it's $15 1,000 words. And normally in a 2-hour interview, you're going to get about 10,000 words. So if that's the case, $150 to get a transcription of what everything the CEO said for 2 hours. That's a pretty good deal. 10,000 words is 15 blogs. Okay? That's a lot of good stuff. So there are ways to get around these issues, and you can save time if you use these tools along with the question framework. Have your executives and your salespeople and your experts answer the questions for you. Just have them record it, and then just type it up and have it transcribed. What does that say? 20? Okay. Then the next piece is, how are you going to talk to the customer about what you do when you don't want to appear salesy? So here's a technique for getting around some of the perceptions about salespeople that you always hear. It's called a success story. Now, the number one digital marketing technique that people use on their websites is a thing called a case study. If any of your clients or you have done it, they're stories about your customers, right? They're things that talk about how your products work and how you did, right? But this is a very succinct and very detailed and very short kind of case study. It literally can be said in 30 seconds. And as you can see, it has 6 components to it. Now, I won't go through the components here, but if you read the customer-centric selling book, it talks about these 6 components. Okay? And you can see that they each have a little purpose in how they're being used. And you'll see that as we go through the rest of this conversation, this same little framework in the conversation is going to be used over and over again. Okay? Key player, goal issue, contributing reason, corresponding capability, benefit statement, and the actual thing that will help the customer. Everything you do has a benefit to the customer, or they wouldn't be doing it with you. It's important to figure out what that benefit really is. Okay? At least with your existing customers. And then you take that same cycle and you turn it around and you reverse it and you say, gosh, the benefit to the customer is, and this is what I need to sell them. Okay? So a case study is a very valuable thing. If you can, when I do my consulting with clients, the first thing I do is I have them tell me 5 stories about the 5 best consulting gigs that they've done with their customers. Right? And I have them explain them to me. What did you do? How did you talk to them? Who did you meet with? Who made the decision? How much money did you make? Right? If you think through these stories, you're going to come up with some really cool stuff that you can tell customers about. Now, I also use a lot of this stuff on my website. And it's little things like this. For example, you can see that in my book I use this Dart and Target logo. Well, the Dart and Target logo is the thing that I use as a point of continuity throughout all my stuff. Every piece of content I develop has the Dart and Target on it. Okay? Whether it's my blog, or whether it's my logo, or whether it's a presentation that I'm doing, or other things that I produce as marketing and selling content, they all have that on there. Okay? And also, I use all this content in other ways. For example, I'm building a 99-question survey. In about a month, you'll be able to go on my website and actually do the survey and rate yourself on how good you are in creating a sales team, if you're a sales manager. Okay? And these kinds of things are the kinds of things that this content can be used for as part of your selling and marketing effort. But remember, this is the same stuff that I talk to my customers about when I go on sales calls. So now you can see how I'm using it in both sides of the fence. I'm using it to build my website, to create my marketing content, to do my presentations, but I'm also using all this stuff to actually go out and sell. Okay? So how do you do that? Here's a technique that I call a sales dialogue, and it's based roughly on what in the customer-centric selling book is called solution development. Solution development is a form of consultative selling. As a consultant, what's the first thing you do when you go out to a site? You have a dialogue with your customer and you collect information. You go out and you try to figure out what they're trying to do and how you want to help them. It's the same thing when you do a sales dialogue with a customer for a salesperson. The only difference is that this sales dialogue is designed to actually finish with you getting business. Okay? And what's one of the things that's different between sales and consulting in the conversation is that when you're selling, your goal is to actually get a deal. Consulting, it's not always the case, right? Consulting, it's about delivery. So, we're going to go through three components rather quickly. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail. Again, if you want more detail, I'm happy to share more information with you, or you can get the book, Customer-Centric Selling, and you can read more about it. The introductory dialogue is literally about a 2-minute set of paragraphs, and I'm not going to read this. I normally read it, but just for the sake of time, I'm not going to do that. The point here is, I basically tell the customer what I do, and then I immediately jump into what they want, right? The issues and goals that they have. Now, how did I get that? Well, maybe it was through researching on Google. I looked at their website, I looked at their press releases, maybe somebody told me something about them. Maybe they made a phone call and gave me some information about what they were looking for. But the thing about this introductory dialogue is, as you can see, that's what, 4 paragraphs? That is the entire conversation I have with a customer before I talk to them about what they want. I don't admire the boat picture on their wall. I don't ask them about their kids. I don't have any kind of personal conversation because I'm not there to develop a personal relationship, although it's nice to be a friend of your customer, certainly. The thing is, we want to develop a good business relationship. And so this conversation is designed to create a really good business relationship. And when you have that good business relationship, oftentimes your customer turns into your friend, which is great. But I can do this entire conversation in 2 minutes. If I have 30 minutes to go meet with a customer, which a lot of them are like that, right? I'm sorry, I have 30 minutes to meet with you. Tell me what you want to do. Tell me what you can help me with. Give me your rate. Heard that conversation ever? This conversation is designed to take 5 minutes so that when I get to the meat of my conversation, I have 25 minutes left. And that's a valuable thing to have. Because the more time I have, the more questions I can ask and the more I can find out about what the customer wants. Once I've done that introductory conversation, then I lead right into the success story. Let me tell you about a customer that we've done Joomla work with in the past, and how we help them. This story is probably the thing that they're looking for. So let me tell you about the customer that I just did a 2.5 conversion with, and how successful they were at that. Okay? So the way that you get the customer to think about things without being salesy is to tell them about one of your other customers. Because if one of your other customers liked what you did, why wouldn't they like what you did? So that's why we use the success stories. We actually use that as the bridge between our little introduction and getting into the meat of the conversation with the customer without getting salesy. Okay? Now, I know this looks a little scary. I want to explain what this is. When you do customer-centric selling, this is in the book, you'll see it when you look at the book. This is a chart that you fill out in order to ask questions to the customer. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask customer questions about what's their current situation. What version of Joomla or what version of web tools do you use for your CMS? How are you administering your system? What's it cost? What did it cost you to buy ads for your paid Google search this last year? Okay. As you can see, the questions that I'm asking are actually the 99 questions. They're just the particular questions from the 99 that are relevant to this situation, right? So I've done all these 99 questions. Now I can pick the ones before I go in and meet with the customer. I can pick out the most important ones that relate to their situation of what it is they're trying to do. Okay? So the framing question might be, how are you currently managing your Joomla site? What's your current situation? What steps can you do to better align your Google ad spend with your budget? Mr. Marketing Director. Okay? And then you ask a bunch of questions about their spend, right? Or if their goal is to do campaigns, you ask questions about their campaigns and what are their goals for their campaigns. You actually already asked a lot of these questions today. The point is that when you ask it in this framework, you get to a point where you can actually ask them for the business. So how do you do that? You ask a what-if question. And if you look in the middle column here, what you'll see is this thing called a usage scenario. That's the what-if question. You can see there's a very specific framework of things that you're asking when you ask this question. So let's look at this. What if in the next 6 months you could grow revenue by 250% so that you can hire 10 more people? Okay, so maybe I'm an e-commerce firm and I need more staff in order to increase the volume of things I can sell and distribute to my customer. That would be a perfect question to ask at the end. After I've asked my questions about their marketing program, their Joomla site, their conversion, their administration, whatever, I now ask this what-if question, and it has all the answers to that information. So when I ask the customer questions, when do you need your site converted by? Why are you doing that, and how much revenue would you need to grow your business by? What's your company's goal for that? So all the things that I have in this question are things that I asked the customer originally during the conversation, and I just turned it into a big question at the end. What if you could do this? What if we could provide the services to help you do this unique thing that you want to do, Mr. Customer? That's what a what-if question does. Now, some people, when they go into customer sites, find it difficult to ask questions. So I always provide an alternative. Okay? Let's say you're the kind of person that really wants to go in and teach the customer about your business. Like you're the SEO guy like Acorn. And you really think that the better way to do things is not to ask so many questions. Maybe you ask a few questions. But it's really to talk about SEO and some of the unique things that people don't understand about SEO that help them do better with it. There's a technique called challenger selling, and again, this is another book you can get. This book, again, I have the references and the authors and everything this on my site. This book, again, is available on Amazon. Talks about a different way of asking the same questions and having the same conversation. It uses the same 99 questions, content. The only difference is the style of conversation that you're having with the customer, right? Instead of asking a bunch of questions, you're teaching the customers some things that they don't know about their own business. This is really great when you have a skill set that's fairly unique and people don't understand it, okay, which is true in a lot of technology stuff that we do these days. In fact, when you impress the customer, what you're going to find is that they're going to go, really? They're going to have that aha moment. They're going to say, wow, I never thought of that before. That's the kind of thing you do with challenger selling, is you give them that aha moment. Now, as you might expect, this takes a lot of knowledge about the topic that you're dealing with. We all know Avery Cohen is a very smart guy when it comes to SEO, very good consultant. The thing that's great about it is that if you really do have an intense knowledge of what the customer is looking for, you can really super impress them when you do your selling. But it's the same information, it's just that you're using your unique knowledge, those teaching things that you know, that I talked about earlier, those teaching questions, instead of doing more of a Socratic questioning method. Okay? Two different methods accomplish the same thing. Now, the last thing I want to mention to you is, you've gone to all this work. You've developed 99 questions, you've written blogs, you've done tweets, you've got all this stuff on your website, you have created your sales dialogue for your salespeople to go out and do with customers, or for you to do with customers. It's all great until you actually execute, right? What's the famous Army saying? We plan for the battle is great until we actually go into battle, and then everything goes away, right? So here what we're saying is you need to manage this process. And the way you do that is you try to understand how people are using this content. If you have a salesperson or salespeople, you want to know that these salespeople are actually doing what you ask them to do, right? That they're having this conversation. Or if you're doing it for yourself, you want to find a way, and I'm going to suggest one to you, of how you rehearse this and role play it and get yourself to understand it so that you can actually do it yourself with a customer, okay? If you're a single shingle like me, what I do is I find another person who's a consultant and I rehearse it with them. And if that means doing a little barter arrangement where I do some consulting for them and they do some consulting for me, that's great. But what I also suggest is if you are not familiar with selling and you want to get better at it, get yourself a sales coach. I'm not volunteering. Okay? But if you're interested in getting good at this, one of the things you should do is find a person who can coach you. They don't necessarily have to know a lot about the selling aspects of it. They just have to be your customer, and they have to be able to respond to you as you do this conversation. Okay? If you have a sales team, they should role play it and practice it before they ever go out and do it. Then go out on sales calls with your salespeople and watch them do it. Or when you do it for yourself, take notes about what you did or didn't do after you're done with the sales call so that you have some idea of what it is that you liked about it and didn't like about it. Because we're all continuously improving, right? We're all learning from our experiences. There's no reason why you can't sit down after a sales call and say, what did I do right or wrong? That's a good thing to do. Now, if you have the ability to do it, and I actually am coaching several people to do this, get a system to manage your selling, okay? Build a spreadsheet with a list of your sales deals that you're doing. Or use a product like based on, it's actually a CRM tool, and again, I have a reference to where you can get information on that tool. It's effectively a free tool where you can put your contacts and your companies, and you can build a little pipeline of sales opportunities, a funnel, if you will, that will help you to control and manage this stuff as you go through it. Because if there's no accountability, as they say, you can't manage what you can't measure, okay? Then you have information that will allow you to make decisions about how things are working when you go out and do these sales calls. You can write documentation down about what did people do right or wrong when they did these calls. What are they using and what aren't they using, right? What did the customer respond to, or what did the customer say? You know, you're an idiot, that stinks. Okay? And then you're able to manage that, and you can look at how you're doing things, and this is something, again, I work with clients on all the time, is you look at the number of opportunities that you have as they go through this process. And you define, prospect, go on a sales call, do a proposal, close the deal. Well, if everything's a do a proposal, all your deals are a do a proposal and you're not getting them closed, then you want to do something about that. There are behaviors and tactics that you can use to change those kinds of things. And again, the books that I'm referring you to have lots of information on how to manage them. So, let's summarize. You can build and implement a sales strategy in 4 weeks, 2 hours a week for the next 4 weeks. Here's what you do. Go download David Meerman Scott's stuff and create the forms for the people that buy from you. You can download that for free from his website. Second, create your 99 questions. Use the 4 value elements to define what your question should be. Build some success stories based on actual things that you've done with your customers where you can take the 5 best deals you ever did, the 5 best consulting deals, or the 5 best web deals, or the 5 best projects you worked on, and write yourself a little success story for each of those projects. Okay? Then take that stuff and answer the questions on your website. Do them in a blog, tweet them, use them for building pages of content about what you do well, about the things that you offer to your customers. But as I said, this is 99 weeks of content that you can put out on a site or in a blog or in other places in order to publicize your business, and yet it's the same information that you're going to talk to customers about when you actually go out on sales calls. Get the books that I recommended. Those books have a lot of detailed information, and they are probably the 3 best books I can recommend to help you understand how to market and sell your business. If you read those 3 books and don't read anything else, you will know a lot about sales and marketing just by doing that. Okay? publish your content. I use, as you all know, I use Joomla as my site and my blog, and I like very much how it works. Then go out and start selling. Get your salespeople or yourself to sit down and go through some role-playing exercises. Do it with a friend, do it with a coworker. Have them be the customer and you be the salesperson, and then reverse the roles and have them do it and have you be the customer. That way you start to get an idea of what it really is like to have these conversations. And you'll begin to realize how much faster and easier the conversations are and how much quicker you can get to actually talking about getting a deal done. Right? And then use a tool like Base, or if you have some money, buy Salesforce.com if you think that's a good tool. But get a tool to manage your stuff. Don't just rely on putting it in your head. List your opportunities out, figure out what you're doing good and bad about them so that you can manage it and manage the conversations. Go out on sales calls with your salespeople. Think about what you did good and bad when you had the conversation with the customer. All the resources and tools I've talked about in this meeting today are links and stuff on my website. You go to the resources page. There's my website. You go to the resources page, and there's all the resources that I'm talking about. Sales in a box, sales management, sales operations. These are all things that I work on. Most of what I've talked about today is either in 99 questions or in sales in a box. So there's the stuff on my book. There's the stuff on sales in a box. And all the links and downloads that I talked about are all here, including my CMS Expo presentation, which is a detailed script that has everything I talked about today in writing. So it's like an ebook if you want to see that. You can download that from my site. Also, this presentation will be downloadable from the Joomla Chicago website in the presentation section. Okay. Any questions? You're all going to go out now and be incredibly great salespeople.